Today, business is technology and technology is business. CIOs have evolved to being business leaders that have a technology focus. The great thing about the CIO role is that it is one of the few roles in the C-suite that you are required to understand all aspects of the business. You have to know and understand marketing. You need to understand finance. You need to understand operations. You need to understand customer service because technology is threaded and embedded through all of those parts of the business. If I were starting a company tomorrow, in the first 90 days, I would hire an enterprise architect and I'd hire a data architect. Because I think a lot of the issues that are encountered later in the maturity cycle, particularly for technology companies, a little foresight up front, right? Setting the foundation around the data architecture, setting the foundation for the application architecture, I think would provide tremendous scalability and tremendous efficiency later on. The human change is always the most difficult for technology. Changing the way people work is the hardest thing to do, but at least you could maybe simplify it by easing the challenge on the technology side by having that foundation.
Welcome to the new automation mindset where AI, automation, and integration come together. I'm your host, Markus Zirn, and as Chief Strategy Officer and part of the founding executive team at Workato, it is my mission to find these top innovators in AI, automation, and integration and share their journeys with all of you. So today I have with me Box CIO, Ravi Malick. Welcome to the show, Ravi. And he's a really experienced CIO. He joined Box in 21, and before that, long history leading IT organizations in the energy industry. Actually won a 2020 Dallas CIO Orbi. So, Ravi, I'm actually really curious. So you joined Box in 2021, and obviously a big step, right? Big step out of the comfort zone and working in energy, working in Dallas, and so on. I'm really curious what motivated you. What was your personal goal, ambition? I'm also curious, Aaron Levy, what did he expect from you? Because it feels like quite a bit of a reset in your career.
Yeah, well, first off, Markus, thank you for having me on the podcast. I appreciate it, getting to spend this time with you. Certainly, it was a bit of a shift, but not too much of a shift because I did spend about 10 years in software and smaller startup companies, financial services and software. So it was almost a bit of a return to the space, if you will. But yeah, it was, there were a number of things that were certainly interesting about the role and, what the opportunity presented. There are two facets to my role. So I have an internal and an external. So internally, I do the things that CIOs do and, focus on running IT, security, operations, keeping things reliable, up and running, investing in new systems, doing implementations, enhancements, et cetera. And then I have a significant external part to my role. So I spend a lot of time with customers. I spend a lot of time with our sales teams, marketing, go-to-market strategy, product strategy, and giving the CIO perspective. And part of my internal role really was to architect a technology environment which can enable growth by operating at high velocity, driving scalability to meet the business needs, not just currently, but really the needs of the future as well. So it's an exciting space. I was a customer for a long time at my previous company. It's an area and a space that I think is really still in its nascency in terms of value and understanding and importance to the enterprise. So all of those things, and then you combine a phenomenal culture at Box, and just two really impressive founders and leaders with Aaron and Levy and Dylan Smith, and it was kind of a no-brainer.
Okay, awesome. Well, so this is really cool because obviously, so what we're out here with this podcast and also with our book is really kind of finding like the traits and the characteristics and kind of patterns, for modern IT leadership. We call it the automation mindset. But so I think you can help us with your experience, energy industry and AdBox, but then also it looks like you're meeting a lot of other IT leaders. So maybe we can you can fold that in as well. What you see is working, what maybe is not. So maybe just you coming in, having done some software and then being in a more traditional kind of energy industry, and then coming back, here in Silicon Valley, I think Box went public, 2015?
I think it was 2017.
2017. All right. Well, kind of right around that time, what we saw a lot here in Silicon Valley was this whole movement around business technology. So some CIOs would actually, openly say, like, don't call me CIO. I'm not about EI. Seems more like, infrastructure. That's not what I am. I'm here to work with the business, and I really want to optimize the technology for the business. I'm just curious, what's your take on that? I mean, what did you hear people say across the country? Maybe in Dallas, maybe in Silicon Valley, maybe elsewhere. I'm curious.
Yeah, there was that movement several years ago, and the common joke is CIO stands for career is over, but I think it is more like career is on the upside. It is, the role has evolved, like many roles, like many other roles in the C-suite. The role has evolved, and where it started in infrastructure and providing back office automation and really kind of just run the business kind of aspects, it has evolved into something that's much more integral, right? I think today business is technology and technology is business. CIOs have evolved to being business leaders that have a technology focus. The great thing about the CIO role is that it is one of the few roles in the C-suite that you are required to understand all aspects of the business. You have to know and understand marketing. You need to understand finance. You need to understand operations. You need to understand customer service, because technology is threaded and embedded through all of those parts of the business. And it's getting to be more and more where it doesn't matter what business you are in. You have to have some level of technology understanding and some aspect of technology within your business. So the title thing, at the end of the day, I think it's really about what are the business outcomes that are being generated, what are the problems being solved. That's going to define the impact of the role. And whether it's CIO or CDO, Chief Digital Officer, or Chief Transformation Officer, I think there's always going to be the technology focus, and it's really how do you make sure that technology is driving, supporting, enabling the business strategy and the goals of the business. I think that's really what it comes down to, right? Is making sure that it's being invested in a way that provides a return for the business, just as you would invest in marketing campaigns, as you would invest in new factories or anything of that nature. I think you have to take the same approach.
Mm. So it seems like if I would paraphrase that, it almost seems like if the IT leader has to have an appreciation of the whole business. As you said, it's a very horizontal role. You're serving all functions of the business and so on. But it seems like it has over time shifted more towards the business, where maybe before it was that a technologist with a little bit of business mindset, but maybe 20 years back it was okay to just run a tight ship in IT and technology and wait for the business to come and ask for things, where now it almost feels like you have to be a little more pushy. You almost like have to go out there and be like a consultant and approach the business and tell them about what technology could do for them. Does that sound right? Yeah,
and I think, as I mentioned earlier, the evolution of technology and how important it has become to businesses, right? It's not just the backbone, right, or the skeletal structure. It's the nervous system. It's the heart. It's the brain, right? It's really, it is, it has become critically important to how businesses operate that, that other areas and other leaders have realized, hey, I need to understand this, right? And I think, for a while there, the old IT view was everything takes 12 months and costs a couple $1 million. And I think unfortunately we probably didn't evolve as quickly. The recognition of the opportunity may have come a little bit later, but I think it's definitely changed. It's definitely shifted. And I think it's there are a couple different viewpoints that you take on this, right? There is as you mentioned, the hard line, centralized, right? Everything has to run through IT. I think that is a recipe for limited success. I think it's a recipe for other parts of the business taking ownership. I think if you view it as an opportunity to educate, an opportunity to tap into capacity, an opportunity to bring people into the fold, right? To change the mindset and say, look, to your point, I'm the consultant, right? So we've been the experts here. We understand how to manage and operate technology. We understand how to deploy it effectively, right? Which those are skill sets that are still absolutely necessary, right? You can't, how many times have you seen where something gets deployed in the business and IT doesn't have awareness of it, and then all of a sudden there are issues and there are problems, right? Because you need professionals that understand how to operate and maintain those things long term. I've always been the view of, hey, I like to say, let's use judo to kind of redirect that energy, right? Redirect it in a positive way, and not fight it, right? I think at the end of the day, if we're all aligned to the same outcomes, to the same goals, right? How we achieve that should be together, right? It shouldn't be, oh, that's in your area or that's in my area, right? I think you see time and time again, teams that are aligned, businesses that are aligned and are in sync execute so much better and are so much more successful. I don't think it should be any different for technology, right? If you're getting alignment on how customer operations, should run, and you want everybody in the company to have a customer focus, or you want everybody to be conscious financially and be fiscally responsible when they manage. Same thing with technology, right? I want everybody to have an understanding of how technology enables their part of the business, how we can help support that, how we can help them innovate, how we can help rethink, not just for the short term, but also for the long term. And that requires getting out and talking to people. That requires building those relationships. It requires understanding, what do you want to achieve, all right? And how does technology fit into the picture? How is it essential to your business? Alignment is absolutely critical. And I think that's not just for CIOs, but that's, for any executive.
So let's stay at that IT business intersection. So one of the things that we have seen, I'm sure you have seen, I'm sure you've seen this at Box, I'm sure you've seen this with customers, Box customers you talk to, is that, the SaaS movement happened, these cloud-based applications. And, some of that's really good because it shortened the time and it reduced complexity and all of that. Both of our products are in the space as well, right? But I think what we're noticing is a lot of SaaS application sprawl. People, CIOs out there ended up with pretty substantive portfolios of these SaaS applications, and unfortunately, if you have more and more of these applications, often the vendors actually work straight with the business people, right? Saying like, yeah, here we solve your problem. But what you get is like also more and more silos in the company. And I'm just curious, like, how did you guys face that at Box? I mean, are you seeing this out there? Like, why is that happening to so many companies?
Yeah. So first off, I love SaaS, right? Like when SaaS came along, it was the next evolution, right? And what it provided was it was an ability to deliver with speed. It provided velocity. Time to value was shortened with SaaS. But as you mentioned, right, because it was so easy, right, and because it's proliferated so much, right, you have an application to solve every niche problem that arises now, right? And so the conversation, and kudos to our industry for shifting the conversation to, hey, I've got an application I can go buy to solve this problem versus, hey, what is the problem I'm trying to solve, right? Let me understand the problem, and then let me figure out how technology is going to help me resolve that or solve that. It is an issue, and I'd love to say that Box was immune to it, but we weren't. I think particularly for technology companies that have gone from startup to mature company, right? You look at how the evolution there, and typically applications are bought by a business owner. It's bought by somebody in finance. It's bought by somebody in marketing, or in customer operations or in sales, right? It isn't until you sort of get critical mass and somebody looks at the price tag and says, hey, we're spending a lot of money in this space. And like, I'm just looking at, I don't know, our project management tools, and we've got 4 or 5 of those things that are basically doing the same thing. And so it is definitely an issue, and talking to other CIOs, it's on everybody's mind, right? It is on every, I don't think there's a CIO I haven't spoken to that has talked about consolidation and simplification, because all of that comes with cost. It comes with administrative costs. It comes with licensing costs, right? It comes with labor costs. When you think about, how do I scale an organization? How do I scale a company? Simplicity is essential to scalability, right? And having complexity and agility in the right places. And when you have application sprawl, right, it creates inefficiency. It creates inefficiency not just in the technology side, but in the business side too, because you're trying to stitch these things together, right? And your plumbing becomes complex, and your data movement between applications becomes complex, and that adds additional cost, right? And so these are things that people, not just technology companies, but like many companies are struggling with. How do you manage it? How do you put the right governance in? How do you architect it, right? I think SaaS will continue to be popular because it does give you the ability to quickly stand something up, to implement in a way that you can iterate off of, to where you can avoid, what everybody wants to avoid, which is the big, hairy IT project, right? That goes on for years and costs millions of dollars. I think the challenge that you see is that a lot of times the longer term view from a roadmap or an architecture view wasn't applied. And now you've got these issues, right, where you have application sprawl, you don't have the right governance, and you're trying to simplify, you're trying to consolidate, both from operational efficiency standpoint and a cost standpoint.
No, that makes sense. So it seems like it really is a problem that's not just only with the tech or digital native companies. It's really pervasive out there. So I'm curious. So I mean, we have other CIOs listening in here. I'm sure they're facing the same kind of problem. I mean, honestly, I talked to a large insurance company the other day, and with them, it was kind of through acquisition. They've gotten like a portfolio of multiple hundreds of applications, and so it's yet a whole other dimension. But I'm just curious, if you were to almost like design a playbook, say like, okay, so what do I have? What's the right mindset? What's the right discipline? Maybe processes, and maybe also importantly, people, resources, roles in the IT organization that you need to address that application sprawl problem. Like, what would it be? I'm just thinking, like, are there any specific people you really need? Is there a certain process people should really implement? How do you go about it at Box?
Yeah, so one of the things that we started with was starting with the data. Right. catalog of the applications, capabilities, functionality, and cost, ownership, and start to look at, okay, where do we have overlap, right? Where's the low-hanging fruit that we can very easily turn things off, not renew, decommission, et cetera. And then, where are the things that maybe are a medium level of effort that'll require, maybe moving some data, implementing some functionality in another app so you can retire. And then there's kind of the bigger lift items, right? Like you're going to consolidate major functionality or core applications into, a single platform or maybe 2 platforms, 3 platforms. But I think you always have to start with the data, right? You have to be able to present to the stakeholders, right? You have to use that to be able to craft a story as to why you think that there's value and benefit in going on this journey. You have to find where the purse strings are, all right? Ideally, that budget gets centralized and becomes centrally managed. I'm a big believer, just kind of having a finance background in my career, that everything kind of flows from the dollars, and being able to put governance around that and control or guide really that spend is critically important, right? And it's not just the budgets. There are other things. Where can people maybe put software on a credit card, or a corporate card, right? So you really have to look at all aspects of how the money is flowing into these different platforms. And then you have to go through the exercise of mapping this stuff out. You have to look at the business capabilities. Okay, what are the business capabilities that we need? What are the business processes? What are the apps that support that? That very quickly, you start to identify overlap and capabilities, and that helps influence your roadmap and the journey that you're going to go on, and at least facilitates the discussion of where do we have opportunity to simplify and consolidate. You talked about roles, right? I think if I were doing a startup tomorrow, right? If I were starting a company tomorrow, I think one of the first roles in the first 90 days, maybe certainly 180 days, I would hire an enterprise architect and I'd hire a data architect. Because I think a lot of the issues that are encountered later in the maturity cycle for companies, particularly for technology companies, a little foresight up front, right? Setting the foundation around the data architecture, setting the foundation for the application architecture, I think would provide tremendous scalability and tremendous efficiency later on, in terms of, okay, I'm at a point where I need to move out of managing this part of the business in spreadsheets. I need an application. Okay, well, I already know how I'm going to plug that into the ecosystem. I know if I need to integrate or pull data, I already understand how that's going to happen, right? And then it doesn't become a silo. It really becomes an engine to the data and the processes that are already supporting the business.
Yeah. I mean, it's really interesting you say that. So we have a customer of ours, HashiCorp, a very fast growing company, successful company. Well. And, we talked to them. I talked to the CEO actually, and, he has an integration background from the past, Dave. And he had an interesting comment. This goes a couple years back. He said, like, look, I really like what you guys do at Workato. I think you are kind of the new wave of integration, but we're not ready for you. And he basically said, like, the way we have IT organized right now is really all in application silos. Like, all the people are working within specific application domains, and and we, even when we integrate applications together, like, every time we look at it as a one-off, like a little Band-Aid that one application team does with the other application. And he said, like, look, we don't have that person that looks across everything, that would even think about like an end-to-end process, like an order to cash. It's like, we got the CRM people, we got the finance people, and the CPQ people, but they all live in their own worlds. And he basically actually said to me, he said, like, look, Markus, give me 6 months we need to hire this person that looks across, and then we're ready for you. And so I think it actually worked out really well. He was totally right. I mean, do you see that out there when you talk to other IT leaders also, that sometimes this architect role maybe is still missing out there?
Oh yeah. I mean, that is a very common story. I mean, you just described what I covered, how companies get started, startups, and how they evolve, where the applications live in these silos. And I think, it's hard, right? It's hard when you're trying to survive the next day, the next month, the next year, right? Like when they're in the early stages of uncertainty, and you're really focused on the survival of the business. But I don't think, at the same time, I would counter with, let's be glass half full, and assume that we are going to make it. And, we are going to have a quote to cash process, and we're going to have a source to pay, and we're going to have a, closing the books. And, and like, I don't think it takes a lot of effort or energy, and it doesn't need to be a whole army of people. One person can be sort of tasked and maybe with additional responsibilities for at least thinking about that, right? How are these things going to ultimately be stitched together? And how do we need to be thinking about that, for the future? Because the challenge of coming in later is not only the technical challenge is harder, right? Because now you have applications that have, they have lots of data, right? They have processes that are embedded within, and you have probably lots of human middleware, right? That is doing the integration in some shape or form. But you also have to you have the challenge of changing the way people operate, right? And the human change is always the most difficult for technology. Changing the way people work is the hardest thing to do. But at least you could maybe simplify it by easing the challenge on the technology side by having that foundation, right? And maybe you don't have to look maybe 12, 2-3 years in advance, but maybe you start looking 12 months in advance, right? And hey, our projected growth is this is what we think it's going to look like. Here's what we believe we're going to need. And again, start thinking about the building blocks for that, so that it's not reactive. There's some proactive effort to the technology aspect of the business. And then you don't have to worry about it, right? Then it doesn't become a bigger project, right? It doesn't become a bigger effort. And in some cases, you're not taking stuff away from people, right? Or you're not giving them sense that, you're taking something away or forcing them to do something different.
Mm. Yeah, you talked about stitching together and the architecture and composing stuff. Also, Gartner came with this concept of the composable enterprise or composable architecture, where you basically do the building blocks, right? Almost like playing Lego. Yeah. Instead of just building the ready-made car or house or whatever it is, like building it up with little blocks. Yeah. Now, obviously, for that, you need a good architect, data architect, enterprise architect, that kind of stuff. But I'm just curious, like, how you think about this. Let's take both of our products. Like, you guys got a very rapidly deployable content solution out there, right? We got this low-code integration / workflow solution, orchestration solution. I kind of wonder, like, sometimes instead of just buying an app and then fitting it in, maybe if you have a certain requirement, maybe it might even be better to, build around bigger building blocks, like your core apps, and then maybe the add-ons, maybe combine them with stuff that you have, like, a combination of Box and Workato could maybe make, if you got some, maybe not the most crazy, but some basic contract lifecycle management requirements, maybe you can build it up quicker than dealing with all the tech debt of buying something and then fitting in it. Does that come up at Box, or do you see that with customers also?
Yeah, no, it does. Right, and this gets back to you can probably find an app to solve every little discrete problem that you have as a business. But I think you have to take a step back. You have to gain some altitude and really look at like, what is the capability that you need? How much of that do you need? And can you, to your point, like, do I have the Lego blocks that I can combine together to get this solution, right? Like, you start to break down, okay, well, what is contract lifecycle management? Well, it's content, contracts, it's e-signature, right? There's probably some intelligence and categorization, some metadata associated with that. Box is the intelligent content management platform, does all of that. And then it's, there's workflow, sometimes simple, sometimes advanced, sometimes complex. Maybe occasionally you need to pull things in from another application. Okay, Workato is a really great solution for doing that, and doing it in a reliable and stable way. So, hey, can I get 90% of the way there? Probably, right? And that's an operating principle for us, right? And something that we've worked very hard to ingrain with our business stakeholders and our partners, is let's look internally first, right? What do we have in the portfolio? Can it get us 80, 90% of the way there? Because the reality is, if you got 20 requirements, right? Of course, the business stakeholder or whoever, the sponsor is, they want all 20. But when you start to attach value to every single piece, right? And you start asking the question, like, what is this doing for the business? You inevitably get to, hey, there's probably 2 or 3 things that they don't really matter, right? And so we could go spend, a couple $100,000 or more on a new application, which we then have to integrate, we have to manage, we have to get the skill sets, or we can get you 90% of what you need by stitching together and combining the blocks that we have that are available to us. That, again, it gets back to making sure you understand the environment, making sure you understand the architecture and the capabilities of each application, right? What are your core applications? What are they designed for, right? Because ideally, I'm putting as much functionality and capability in our core applications. The things that I know, they're not going to change, right? They're there for the long term. I need them to be stable. I need them to be reliable. I need them to be enterprise grade. At the next level, maybe it's kind of, core -1, things that maybe need a little bit more flexibility, but are still probably, fairly critical. And then there's that last part, where you need the agility, and you want to be able to swap things out because you want best of breed, or you want the latest and greatest because, it is directly impacting your pipeline. It gives you ability to drive more revenue. It gives you ability to very quickly, take out cost, right? But that should be a small part of the environment, right? And that's where, when I talk to other CIOs and we talk about this, I said, look, I want that core part to include as much as possible, right? Because if that's fairly immutable, right, then we understand, like, okay, we're going to put that core functionality into this area. But for things that we want to be agile, we want, there is a component, a market dynamic, or a market component or an innovation component, that's going to give us a competitive advantage. Yeah, let's go do that. But that's our competitive advantage isn't in our financials, how we do the books, right? Our competitive advantage is how we get our message out, how we get and educate more people on Box and intelligent content management and what that means and how it's important to their business. So, those are the things that I really want. I want that agility because that's the area that changes a lot.
Mm-hmm. But I wonder where we are as a in the whole IT community. Like, if I go out and talk to other CIOs, and let's say like I go beyond Silicon Valley, I go somewhere more traditional industries. what I see, and maybe you've seen that in energy when you were there. I mean, people, they build certain parts of what they need almost totally custom. So they have a set of application developers, and they build it as it's Java code or .NET code or whatever. And so it's basically almost like a little software company in a bigger company. And then they have people who manage the packaged applications. But what we just talked about, that kind of combining the two worlds, and taking a little bit of a packaged app and maybe adding on a little bit, that seems to me like, I'm not sure the message has clearly come through just yet. It seems like those silos are still quite there. It's like it's either custom and it's all custom, or it's like packaged and it's all packaged, where I think maybe the future, especially with all the smaller SaaS pieces, is maybe by taking the smaller pieces and then and maybe also this whole low code technology that's out there now, and kind of combining it also with almost with a portfolio management approach. It feels like in IT that what in the investment world people would say, like, I have a portfolio approach of how I manage my money. That doesn't we're probably not entirely there yet, huh?
I would say it varies.
It varies.
I think I do talk to CIOs who take that approach and have that viewpoint, who understand that even in the custom side, right, pre-built components, right, and being able to standardize your foundational components, even if you're building from scratch, is incredibly important, right? I mean, that's kind of software building 101. What I find that is most common is getting to, understanding what is the value of that, right? What is my core business? Is something core to my business such that I should have a software team, right? I should develop it custom. And I encountered this, in the energy industry, where, we were largely, off the shelf software that we configured and customized to our needs. But there were areas that we looked at and said, look, it is trying to stitch together what is available isn't going to get us what we need. It is a competitive advantage such that we do want to build it and manage it. And, potentially it's a revenue generating opportunity for us. It's a massive differentiator. And so, you get back to this, the value aspect of it, right? And looking at it from a portfolio perspective, how I'm going to invest in this. Am I going to buy it or am I going to build it? And that gets back, there are three things that are, going to dictate my approach and how I think about, the environment on a day-to-day basis. And that is, how am I maximizing value? How am I making sure that every dollar we spend, is 1.5x or 2x or 5x, that we are getting the most out of our money that we're spending? How am I mitigating risk, right? Am I taking the right risk, right? And two dimensions to risk, like, are we taking the right risk and innovating where we need to, but are we mitigating, the cyber threats and, all the other risks, the stability and reliability risks. And then the third thing is, managing cost. And I think, you take those three dimensions and you apply that, to those decision points, and you come out with, okay, maybe I need to build this, right? Maybe it is such a differentiator. I think where you see this kind of gone awry is, where you get this kind of over extension into the build mentality is, oh, well, that CRM, we're going to have to customize it. So, we're just going to build our own CRM, or we're going to build our own billing platform, right? I think that's where you really have to ask why. Why would you do that? There are plenty of companies that do that. It's not core to your business, but hey, building maybe the digital experience for your customer, right? Or building the mobile experience for your customer, the web, something unique, and plugging that back into package. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe that's how, you differentiate. Maybe that is a competitive difference.
Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, it's all down to economics, all different dimensions of economics. Listen, last question, and I mean, how can we not? How can we have an interview in 2024 not talk about Gen AI, right? So, but I want to kind of ask that question in the context what we've discussed before, the business applications and that portfolio of SaaS applications. Some people say that these AI agents could actually really change a lot with the business applications, because user interfaces, a really important part of what business applications are. With these AI interfaces, natural language, and so on, we'll get a much more natural kind of interaction, and that seems like it has a disruptive factor. I'm also curious because you guys obviously, I mean, AI probably has the biggest impact on unstructured data out there, just given what it understands. And you guys are at the core of that. So really curious what your take is on it when you have conversations out there with Box clients on AI agents, on impact on AI, on the business applications. What's your viewpoint?
Oh, it's interesting. So, I have a viewpoint, and then there's what I glean from conversations. But I think my viewpoint is very bullish on it. I think it is, AI, particularly generative AI, does have a long-term potential to really change the way that we do work and how work gets done. I think it has, an immense positive outlook. Like the positive outlook is very, strong in terms of its ability to scale, right? And this is, mentioning earlier, like I'm very focused on scalability. I think that opportunity is pretty sizable there. I think we've got some time, right, that it's going to take to get there. The conversations that I have, and this is, I would share this viewpoint, is where is the enterprise value, right? How am I generating competitive difference? Almost universally, CIOs and leaders that I talk to have kind of come to the opinion of, hey, the ChatGPT and the Copilot and that stuff, for the digital assistant, personal assistant, it's cool, it's interesting, and I get some productivity uplift. But like, what's next, right? What is going to drive much larger value, right? Much more quantitative value. I think we've seen the areas where, in code development, we certainly have seen value there in some of the customer or user interactions and resolving issues, kind of one-click resolution, self-service. We've certainly seen an uplift there. And I think that's where most people are looking. There are some other kind of pockets of areas, maybe in marketing, writing copy, campaigns, those kinds of things. They have value, but I think people are looking for, like, how do I really change my business? That's changing pockets. It's maybe turning the dial a little bit, but like, how do I really scale up, right? How do I get to this point of driving transformative change? And I think, when you talk about AI agents and the workforce, right, and what does that future look like? Yeah, I think that, maybe that is something that, is possible in the next few years. If I need to execute on a marketing campaign and I want to do outbound email and calls and messaging and targeted messaging, maybe I have the ability to spin up a new, an AI agent workforce that goes and does that and handles that. When you think about, some of the manual intervention points, in processes, maybe there's an AI agent that can handle that. And you are starting to see some of that. Where we obviously see the future, because unstructured data and content is the fuel for generative AI, and where, that's where the value is going to be generated, is, managing that, articulating, hey, here's the value, having an architecture that's flexible, that allows you to expose AI capabilities into your existing technology stack and leverage the model ecosystem, right? I think that's incredibly important, right? And to get back to some of the earlier points I made around architecture and having that flexibility and understanding kind of how that's going to work. The challenge a lot of us have are everybody's coming out with their AI flavor, right? Everybody's got, an AI component. Typically it's focused on that area, right? Whatever that application is focused on, whether it's sales or marketing or HR or customer service. I want something that is going to drive value across all areas. I want an architecture, and this is kind of where Box AI comes into play. I want an architecture where I can leverage my existing investments. I have the governance, and I have the level of control and understanding and flexibility around security, the security of my data. I know that it's secure externally. It's not being used to train models that can be used by my competitors. I know that internally, the access management controls are being respected, right? And people have access to what they should have access. They don't all of a sudden have access to data that they wouldn't have, right? Those things are super, super important to most CIOs, right? And so you see in this area, a lot of companies are building their platforms, right? Because I think that there's still the viewpoint on risk associated with using somebody else, right? Or having multiple versions or flavors in your environment is still pretty bearish right now. And so, where we really feel like we can make a difference is being able to provide our customers that solution that gives them the ability to safely experiment with AI, that gives them the scalability to expose through APIs into their existing technology stack, to be able to leverage the best of breed of LLMs. And so I personally think that, that kind of flexibility in your architecture is essential, because this is a market that's changing, it's moving, right? And you're going to see consolidation. Companies that were built on, ChatGPT 3.5, like the next version comes out and they're gone. They're irrelevant. So, I look for a solution that's going to give me a hedge to how fast it's moving, to the consolidations that's going to occur, but I can still continue to grow with.
It's fascinating. I mean, look, we could probably talk
I could talk about this for
hours here.
Yes.
I mean, but first of all, I wanted to say thank you to share all your experience with us. I mean, what I'm taking away from our conversation today, it almost feels like, so we, as an IT, leadership, we've kind of gone through this whole SaaS explosion. I think we're still somewhat digesting all of this, all of us. I think you laid out very nicely how, enterprise architecture, data architecture really is something that everybody should be thinking about. I think, no matter what industry, whatever, I think that is important. And then I think these generative AI agents and so on, I think they're gonna topple over our world once again. So I think we're going to have to adjust once again and rethink and redo. But I guess that's what's the fun. It seems to me, I mean, if you're thinking about this composable architecture with all the Lego blocks, I mean, I think we got a new building block with which is AI, or is these AI agents, and whoever is the enterprise architect just gotta take that into account and think about, okay, how can I put that block, that new building block I have, into that architecture that I'm designing? How can I combine it with the applications, with all the other stuff? I think that's what's exciting.
How can I use it to accelerate things, right? How can I use it to accelerate enhancements, refactoring, and the advancement and modernization of the environment? I think that is a really exciting, potential and opportunity for where AI is going.
All right. Awesome. Hey, Ravi, thank you so much. And let's leave it with that excitement here for the whole audience. I think I feel the same way. So thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Please make sure to rate today's episode, leave us a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe to the show so you will never miss an episode. I'll see you next time.